doctors are not happy-go-lucky people. You're highly driven, competitive. You're often very focused individuals who put themselves through exam after exam after exam. Hello and welcome to A Doctor's View, a podcast looking at everyday health topics and life through a doctor's eyes. Please note that all opinions are my own and should not replace the advice given to you by your own doctor. I'm Dr. Bolivios. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to A Doctor's View. Today I'm going to be talking about a topic that's close to the hearts of many doctors, and that is burnout amongst doctors. It's an important topic that we often see in the news or in headlines quite often, and it's often portrayed in the form of suicide or in the form of a doctor leaving the medical profession altogether and everything in between. So, why do doctors suffer from burnout? Firstly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss what burnout is, explain why I feel that we suffer from it more than other professions, and also talk about how bad it is and how it can actually affect us. Now, burnout is defined as a syndrome of emotional exhaustion involving the development of negative self-concepts, negative job attitudes, and a loss of concern and feeling for patients. And this is what's defined from the Royal College of Psychiatrists. The prevalence of depression in UK doctors is between 10 and 20%, and it does vary between studies that you do. And burnout affects variously as well, between 25 and 76% of doctors. I think a recent study showed nearly 2/3 of general practitioners had suffered from burnout. And this can have quite detrimental effects, not only to the doctor concerned, but also to their patients, to their families, their friends. It's an entire cascade of problems that arise from someone suffering burnout. It's not just the person affected. So to start with, let's look at everything from the beginning. Medical career starts at a very early age. It starts before you're sitting your GCSEs. This might sound ridiculous to a notion, but when you think about it, the exams that you take, the GCSEs that you choose to do, they're going to dictate the A-levels that you will then be able to do later on, and subsequently the A-levels that you need to do to get into medical school. So right from the start, you're planning, if you're planning to go into medicine, you're automatically planning your GCSEs that you're going to sit, and you're planning the A-levels that you want to do. Bear in mind, this is a lot of pressure for someone who's 13, 14, 15 years old. You're essentially starting to put your eggs into one basket. You are expected to get straight A's. You're expected to get straight A's in A-levels too. You lose 2 UCAS places automatically. Normally you get 6 choices. This is in the UK. Whereas for medicine, if you apply for medicine, you only get 4 choices. So automatically you're under a lot of pressure. You've got to do very well. You are applying for something that's very oversubscribed, and this happens from a very young age. That aside, you're then in medical school, and you do your 5 years, which are 5 strenuous years. They're not easy. There is a lot to learn, and they are full years. I remember having a housemate who was at university 6 months of the year versus my 9, 10. So it's a very different course to a normal degree. But of course, at this point, you're young, you're enthusiastic, you're energetic. This isn't where burnout sets in. I've heard doctors at university, at least when we were studying, they always describe themselves as, I'm happy-go-lucky. I'm blasé and this, that, and the other, kind of trying to depict this attitude of being very go with the flow. Doctors are not happy-go-lucky people. You're highly driven, competitive. You're often very focused individuals who put themselves through exam after exam after exam, um, constantly, not for 1 or 2 years, but throughout an entire career, and in a very competitive environment, trying to go into a specialty which could be even more competitive than another. We're not happy-go-lucky people, and I think that's one thing that people that say they're happy-go-lucky really need to think about before they say that. We're not. And this is the type of personality that often we are. And this is one of the reasons why we can experience burnout. We don't know when to stop, we don't know how to stop. It's like if you watch a Formula One Grand Prix, once they've won the race, once the driver's won, when they're on the podium, they're not thinking about the race that they've just won. They're thinking about the next one and the next one and the one after that. They want more. And we're the same. We do one thing, we pass an exam, we finish med school, then you want more. You want to get your full GMC certificate, then you want more, and you want to specialize, and you want more. You want to become a registrar, then a consultant, and then open up your own practice or whatever it may be. You always want more. And this isn't a bad thing at all. I think, ambition's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I think the world should be full of it. But it can often not be conducive to the healthiest of lifestyles. The next thing you got to look at is hospital life itself. A hospital is a very stressful environment, not just for patients, not just for relatives, but also for those looking after those patients. You are dealing with life and death constantly, even if you're not directly involved in a patient in a care for a patient who has passed away. You are constantly surrounded by it. It's a very, very odd place emotionally to be. Going back to when I first started as a doctor, one of the most awful days I remember was being a foundation year 2 doctor, so second year out of university. I was working in a pediatric unit at the time, and we had an ambulance call to say that a child was coming into A&E, and that child unfortunately didn't make it, and they were unfortunately dead on arrival. We spent about an hour and a half trying to resuscitate this child to the best we could, and sadly they had passed away. In the same day, I then had to go immediately afterwards and do newborn baby checks, and it was very difficult. You've got parents crying only a few moments ago that you witnessed because of the death of a child, and then you're congratulating parents for their new bundle of joy. And this is very rarely can you experience such a wide range of emotions in a very short space of time and in such a short setting. And it also is difficult because obviously whilst I was dealing with the child in A&E with the team, I wasn't able to do the newborn baby checks. So I had parents complain to me that they were waiting for so long to have their newborn baby checks because obviously they're excited and wanted to go home. Now, of course, I didn't tell them where I was. I just apologized and took it on the chin, as it were. It's a lot of emotions. You've got a little bit of frustration, a little bit of anger. You've got a huge sadness. You've got joy for these new parents as well, who want to enjoy their time with their newborn. And this is something that happens on a everyday basis. There's something like this going on in the hospital all the time. And this is a lot to take in. You may not notice it at the time, but it's only when you go home and you think about the day, or you realize it about a week later, maybe, and it manifests in a variety of different ways. And it can lead to burnout over time. So we are dealing with death all the time. You're having to explain to patients, break bad news to patients on a regular basis, that they may have an incurable illness. You may have to break bad news to relatives that that unfortunately their father, mother, grandparent are very sick and they're not going to make it. And this is, again, emotionally very difficult. One, being able to do it in a tactful manner to try to keep people from breaking down. This is very hard to do, but also it's a strain on the person breaking the bad news too. It's often overlooked that as healthcare professionals, be it doctors, nurses, healthcare assistants, being surrounded by all of this and having to witness it all often does remind you of events that nigh on everyone can relate to personally. And this can be very hard. There is also a bullying culture that still is maintained within the NHS, and it has got a lot better. And what I mean by this is it can be inconducive to a very unhealthy working environment. There are times where you are shouted at. Now, this does vary from specialty to specialty, at least I've noticed that. But it may even just be a passive aggressive form, even just a lack of gratitude. Now, I remember a time when I was doing a very busy surgical job, and it was a night shift. I saw over 20, nearly 30 patients, and when I say saw, I meant sorted as much as I could out. And on top of that, I had to deal with the wards and all the rest. I did it to the best of my ability. It was a busy shift, and instead of gratitude in the morning, what I got was the list of patients wasn't in alphabetical order. That's not good enough. And I had to bite my tongue and just carry on. Now, things like that can weigh you down over time. Again, as I said in a previous podcast, no one's expecting, uh, you know, relationships with seniors, with everything in terms of socializing and all the rest. But sometimes a thank you every now and then goes a very long way. And I implore any medic listening to this, thank your theatre team, thank your nurses, thank your juniors. It goes a long way. They remember it. And I'm sure everyone can relate to that. And following on from that, when you do have busy shifts, which is often very regular, especially nowadays, if you've ever walked past an A&E unit, you will see how busy it is. You cannot look after one patient well. And by that, I mean as well as you want. You can sometimes have a bleep that does not stop going off. It's incessant. By the time you've answered one phone call, you get another bleep and another and another, and you can't focus on your job. This is stressful to not be able to look after someone that you know is unwell, and it's just the way the NHS is now. And even things like not having time to go to the loo. You may be in a long theatre case lasting for hours and hours on end. You may not have had anything to drink. And all these things, again, are stressors. We cope with them, we deal with them, and we say it's part of our job. It's what we knew going into it. And yes, I'm sure we all love our jobs, but we don't realize just how much over time, I feel at least, that this can slowly chip away at you and end up in a burnout. Now, hospital life aside, you then got your personal life to deal with. You may have a mortgage, you may have family problems, illnesses, either personal illnesses or illnesses within the family. You may have financial difficulties. It's very easy to go into a medical unit, a hospital, and see some amazing people doing amazing things. And we can forget that these people are people. They're human. They have the same problems that everyone else does, and they can manifest in many ways. And unfortunately, medicine doesn't help with that because you don't have the same time to deal with those problems. And sometimes those problems are exacerbated by being in the medical profession and being sometimes, unfortunately, more often than not, in a disorganized profession. So, for example, you might be looking to get a mortgage or a loan, and the bank's asking to see your contract to see how much you're earning. And you have to say to them, I haven't got a contract yet. I've worked in places where I received my contract after I left. And that's just poor organization. You may not be able to book a holiday because you haven't got your rota yet. You don't know if you're on call. You may not be able to say yes to that wedding or that party or whatever it may be because you don't know what you're doing or you're working a night shift. And these are all things that really do affect everyday life. And it doesn't just affect the doctor or the shift worker in the hospital themselves, it also affects those around them. And this can sometimes put strain on so many things, be it family relationships, be it personal relationships. And again, this adds to all the stresses that you face every day and can lead to burnout. On top of that, you've got other things to do with your job as well that you have to do outside in your personal life. And I have touched on this before in another podcast, but you do have things like exams, audits, appraisals, assessments, revalidation. These are all things that take time to do, and they are things that you're not paid in time to do. They're things that you have to do in your own free time. You have to sacrifice that cinema trip. You sacrifice that birthday party. You sacrifice spending time with family, friends, loved ones to do these things. And often it gets to a point where doctors ask themselves, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I detracting so much from things that make me happy to do these things that are essentially just jumping through hoops to tick a box to allow me to say yes to practice for longer or to progress up the ladder? And it can make people miserable. And again, this can all lead to burnout. So the point of this podcast is to try and raise awareness to this situation. It's something that I feel is happening more often because there are more pressures on the NHS. There are more pressures in life. Even things like social media, for example. This is a new phenomenon, relatively new phenomenon. And we've often seen articles and headlines about it, social media causing depression or causing mental health illness. And doctors aren't immune to these type of things, but these are all things that help add to the problems of burnout as well. I just want people to know that any doctors listening to this know that you're not alone, and you're not the first, you're not the last to suffer from burnout if you feel that you are. But the important thing is to recognize it, to recognize that you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling unhappy, and to talk to someone about it. There's a number of things that we can do. We can look out for each other, and this is why I'm also addressing this to the general population. Don't have to be a medical professional at all, but if you do know someone who, it doesn't have to be medicine, anyone can suffer from burnout in any profession. I'm just simply focusing on medicine as it's something that I know about. But we need to make sure that, check in on that friend from time to time, check in on that relative from time to time. Make sure that they're okay. We need to initiate discussions with people, not just wait for something unfortunate to happen and then think, oh, there were signs there before. If you see someone that starts looking disheveled all day and starts turning up to work late, or just looks stressed day after day, all these little things, they're subtle, but often when we look back and we reflect, we think, maybe we could have picked up on this. There's a study that showed the alcohol intake of doctors and the sort of drug abuse of doctors, and it was quite a high proportion of people. I think it was 20% said they drank relatively regularly or binge drank. I think on the criteria, at least, I think 5% actually were could be diagnosed with alcohol abuse. So if you are noticing someone drinking too much, or even things like taking too much coffee, all these little things, it's worth bringing up. So lastly, I want to sort of mention a few things about what to do if you are a doctor and you want to seek help, or you feel that you need to seek help. There's a few things, and there's a brilliant leaflet by the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and they mention a few things. I'm going to run through some of them. So they say monitor your own health and stress levels. So monitor your sleeping patterns, ensure you're getting good night's rest every night. Ensure healthy living, and we're often very good at telling patients how to live their life, the importance of diet, exercise, etc. And often we're pretty bad at doing it ourselves. And so it's important to have a balanced diet and reduce your caffeine intake as well. I will try and do a podcast about caffeine. It's quite an important topic. Ensure that you're getting at least 30 minutes exercise 5 times a week. Then things like monitoring your own stress coping strategies. So what that means is, what do you do at times of heightened stress? There are people that reach for the bottle, as it were, or substance abuse, and it's monitoring to make sure that you're not doing something destructive at that time where you feel particularly stressed. Keep a alcohol diary, or keep a diary of things that you regret afterwards, as it were. Discuss your situation with family and friends, and this, I think, can't be emphasized enough. We all know people. We've all got friends. We've all got family. Use them. Share problems with them. It is a cliche to say a problem shared is a problem halved, or a problem shared is a problem solved, but it is very true. Just getting something off your chest, even if it's just getting off a difficult situation with a colleague, that something that you've been through, in a safe environment, without breaking confidentiality and all those things. But just being able to talk about a difficult day to a colleague. And that leads to the other thing that's mentioned is informal discussion with colleagues. You try and they may have had a similar experience, and this can help. You think, someone else has been through this. They know they can arrange peer groups or some form of way of dealing with it together. Then we go into sort of things like formal discussions with colleagues. If you're a doctor in a hospital, and I believe even in general practice, you have supervisors, you have clinical supervisors, you have educational supervisors. Often trusts and hospitals themselves have a pathway to help tackle the work-related issues and help tackle stress. Uh, there are paths and there are things put in place to allow juniors and consultants to discuss some of the things that have gone on and discuss anything that's on your mind. And occupational health can even help with that. Another thing to do is your GP is a very, very useful person, and they are very helpful. And a UK study found that although 96% of doctors are registered with a GP, very few actually made use of their services, and a quarter of consultants would bypass their GP altogether to obtain further consultant advice. So use your GP. They have seen this, they've dealt with it, they know the right channels, and they can help you. So with that, I will leave you. If you do have any topics you'd like me to discuss or like me to look into, please email me. My email address is in the podcast description. And as always, please look after yourselves, and I look forward to joining you again next time. I'm Dr. Bolivios. Goodbye.